This is Rick Thomas. Thank you for joining me for this quick video. I'm going to be teaching on self-reliance. It is a common struggle with all of us. I want to walk through this, and I'm going to do this quickly, so you may want to stop the video at any point just to absorb some of the things that I am teaching. First of all, self-reliance is an illusionary life. It's not real. In order to be totally self-reliant, you have to reduce your world down to something that you can manage. The truth is, only God is omnipotent, only God is reliant, and so for us creatures, finite creatures, in order to pull off self-reliance, we have to, again, create a world that we can control. And so we can live anywhere within our self-contained universe, and as long as we are functioning within our strengths, the areas that we can control, it is a win-win. But the problem with this, besides it is a sinful worship structure, is that life is not that neat, and we are not able to control our universe in such a complete way that things do not get out of control. So you will find from time to time that God, in His mercy to us, will push us out of our box, and that's the point where we become fearful and we try to figure out how to manage our lives, but what God is doing, similar to Matthew 14, when Jesus called Peter out of his self-reliant boat and to walk on the water, it is only when we are relying on God that we are able to do all things through Him who strengthens us. Otherwise, we're just going to live in a win-win universe that is really illusionary, and again, as long as we can work within our strengths, we'll be fine. But I think if you live long enough, you know that that's not how things go. And so if you're helping the self-reliant person, what you want to do is to get under the surface of their lives. What you see as far as self-reliance is concerned is the world, the physical world, the behavioral world in which they live. In fact, you can see a self-reliant person and really be fascinated, maybe even envious, and you can definitely applaud them. But that's what you see above the ground. But if you want to help them to break out of self-reliance or self-sufficiency, you'll have to begin to unpack their worship structure, meaning you have to drive toward their heart to see what their functional theology really is. And the first stop below the surface of their life, the first idol that you're going to run into is the idol of control. The idol of control says, I want to control my universe because that is the way that I am most comfortable. That is the way that I feel safe and secure. And if I take charge of things, if I can keep myself within this structure, this defined area, I'll be fine. And so in order to pull off self-sufficiency, you have to be a controller. That is the first idol underneath the surface. The next idol that you're going to run into is the idol of comfort. And so we have three idols that you're looking at thus far: the idol of self-reliance, the idol of control, and the idol of comfort. What comfort says, basically, is I'm not comfortable with how things are, therefore I must control things, therefore I am self-reliant. And that's how it works from the bottom to the top. But as we go deeper into this person's functional theology, what you're going to find underneath this craving for comfort are fears, different kinds of fears, and tied to those fears, you'll see this constellation of shame and guilt. Shame and guilt is how we are born in our Adamic natures. It is that internal awkwardness that we all have within us. And so what you have is a fearful person with levels of shame and guilt. And what they do is they seek comfort. They want to be comforted, and they figure out how to bring comfort in their lives, and then they control it at all cost. And then what you have is a self-reliant person. By the way, Adam was the first person to ever do this. And again, that's why I said initially, this is our common problem because we are Adamic in nature. And so when Adam chose to unbelieve, he experienced shame and guilt. He began to be afraid, as he told God a little bit later. He sought comfort through fig leaves and escaping the problem and blaming the problem on someone else. He basically began to control his world, and he became a self-reliant man. Prior to that, he lived in the garden in chapters 1 and 2 of Genesis, and he enjoyed the bigness and greatness of what God offered, and he could do what Paul said in Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But because he chose to unbelieve, he had to whittle his world down to something more manageable from a human perspective. And what you see on the screen here is Adam's worship structure, which is also yours and mine. And if you get to the heart of it, what you're going to find at the very core of this person is functional atheism, the unbelieving believer. Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. We believe in a salvific way, one and done. You are saved, and that is irrevocable. However, we do struggle with trusting God in our sanctification. We do have moments of unbelief where we want to act out according to our Adamic nature, which is what you see here on the screen. I call it functional atheism. We are Christians, we are believers, but yet our functional theology, our practical theology is more atheistic. Now, if a person persists in having this kind of worship structure, he will do all that he can to maintain this structure according to his human strength. And when this thing begins to topple over, or when it gets shaky, or when the winds begin to blow, he will have some mechanisms that he will employ in order to regain control of his universe. And one of the more common mechanisms is anger. Anger is a manipulative tactic of insecure people to regain control of their universe or whatever it is they feel like they are using. And so anger becomes a tool that he can implement so that he can regain control. Of course, if this thing does fall down, if this worship structure does fall down, he will have to explain that away. And one of the ways that he will do that is to blame what's going on in his life on other people, rather than owning the fact that he can't manage his life and things are not going perfectly for him. He will blame. And of course, this is what Adam did. Now, you want to address what is going on in the heart of the person. It's unbelief. You want to begin to walk them through the problem, because the issue is not above ground self-reliance. That's not the primary issue. The primary issue is way below the surface. It's the heart of unbelief. I have some synonyms here for unbelief: faith, hope, belief, trust. Those are 4 ways of saying the same thing, and those are the solutions, okay? Faith in God, and that's what we're talking about. Faith in God, hope in God, confidence in God, belief, trust in God. And so at the heart of the self-reliant person, what you have is a deeply rooted theological problem. And the main question on the table that you want to ask is, why is this person not willing to fully trust God with their lives? Now, when I ask this question of people, as I've done this through the years with counseling, there are 3 answers that always come back. Sometimes it's one of 3, but in most cases, it's a combination of all 3 of these answers. The question is, why will you not trust God? You could frame it this way: I cannot trust God if I am mad with Him. That's anger. I cannot trust God if I am afraid of Him. I cannot trust God if I do not know who He is. And so you go back to Peter on the boat in Matthew 14. Suppose Peter does not get off the boat. You could ask Peter, why didn't you exercise faith in God by stepping off the boat? Why did you choose self-sufficiency, staying within your box, or in his case, staying on the boat? Well, Peter could not trust God if he was angry with him. Peter could not trust God if he was afraid of him. Peter could not trust God if he didn't know who he was. And so these are the 3 primary faith killers in our life. And if you want to work through this problem of self-reliance and unbelief, You'll have to work through your anger, your fear, and your ignorance. And of course, the solution to this is the gospel. There is something functionally wrong with this individual's understanding and practice of the gospel. Now, this is the problem. Paul said in Ephesians 4, put off the old person. And then in verse 24, he said, put on the new person. There is a complete opposite side to what you are looking at on the screen here. Now, if you want to learn more about that, I do have a full-length webinar on our membership site. You can become a member of our site, and you can get that webinar, and you can watch it as many times as you want to. I'm going to also add some articles here, a couple of articles in this video package here, so if you want to read more about that, you can. And then also we have forums for you as well. And so if you want to talk to me directly, you can go to our public forum or our private forum if you are a supporting member. But if you want to watch the entire webinar, I would encourage you to become a supporting member of our site. You can do that for as little as $5 a month, and you can find us at rickthomas.net. So go to rickthomas.net, and you will be able to find all the information that you need and ask the questions that you need to ask. And if you are a supporting member, you're welcome to watch the full length of this webinar on overcoming unbelief, defeating self-sufficiency, and self-reliance. We are helping people live effective lives. Thank you so much for watching this video.